Hello there, this is Simon from Tokyo Productions and welcome to another tutorial for Motion 5. And because this is the last tutorial of the year, I thought I would do a seasonal, snowy, ice-based effect. So let's get started. I've already got my text typed in here, and I recommend you use a nice fat font like I've done. I would also recommend that you use the tracking to make some space between the letters. So I'm going to use 14, and that's because we're going to be extending the outline as we go. Let me just point out that the project is 1920-1080, the frame rate is 24 frames a second, and the duration is 10 seconds. Another thing I'm going to do before we go too much further is I'm going to set a play range, and that's because I want the animation to freeze, as it were, at 1 second and 14 frames. So I'm going to go to there, 1 second and 14, and I'm going to hit Command Option O to set a play range. That enables me to easily shift up and down between the beginning and the end of the play range. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, come to the Mark menu, go to, and you'll see that you can use these commands, Shift, whatever, however you describe that arrow, to go to the start and or end of the play range. So I'm going to be using that as we proceed, just to make life easier rather than having to type in the number. So let's get to work. First of all, I'm going to do some adjustments to the style of my text, and I'm going to first of all twirl open the colour for the face and type in a value of 0.52, 0.52 and 0.65, and I'm going to come to the outline, turn it on, twirl open the colour. There I'm going to set a colour of 0.8, 0.85 and 1, like so. I'm going to set the opacity of both of those to 35%, like so, and the width of the outline I'm going to set to 12. Next, I am going to apply a behaviour so that the text appears to write on, or wipe on rather. I'm going to come to my library, Behaviours, Text Animation, and I'm going to apply Sequence Text. I'll come to the inspector and I'm going to add Format Opacity, and an opacity parameter pops up. We're going to turn that opacity down to 0, and if I now play through, you'll see that that gradually wipes on. I want this animation to end at 4 seconds, so I'm going to come there and I'm going to hit O on the keyboard, and that's going to trim the animation so it's shorter. But you notice it's quite steppy, and in order to avoid that, I'm going to set the spread value to 40. And now there's a much smoother animation of that. Really, really nice and soft. Next, I'm going to add a filter to my text to start building up this snowy look, and I'm going to come to Stylize and select Crystallize rather appropriately, and you'll see that that immediately breaks up the outline of the text. The difficulty about motion is that there aren't that many ways of actually distorting vectors, and you have to pick and choose and try and make the best of the few filters that you have available. And in this instance, we're going to use the Crystallize, and I'm going to set the speed to 0 because I don't want it to animate. I don't want that sort of swirly behavior. I just want a static texture, and I'm going to set the size to 61. And there you go, it's nice and mangled, just how I want it. And in order to animate that, I'm going to come to the first frame and set a keyframe value for the mix for 100%. Come to my mark out position and set a keyframe of 20. Again, I'm using those, just to remind you, go to play range start and play range end. Next, we're going to duplicate this text. So Command D to duplicate. And I'm going to set the blend mode of this second version to screen. I'm going to come to the style and I'm going to animate the width outline. So I'm going to come to my first frame and I'm going to hit the keyframe button, set that to 30, come to the mark out and set that to 1. I'm also going to animate the opacity of the layer. So I'm going to hit a keyframe there. This is my mark out position. I'm going to set that to 0, come to my start and set it to 100. So now it's fading out. So basically what we're doing is building up a nice complex crystallized text. And the more complexity we add, the more interesting this will look. And one last thing we need to do before we move on is to come to the filter, and I want to reset that mix animation. So I hit the reset and it'll remove the animation. Next, I'm going to duplicate that base layer again. Use Command backwards square bracket to bring it to the top and set the blend mode to screen. And then we're going to change the style properties for this. We are going to animate the face opacity. So I'll come to my first frame, hit a keyframe for the face opacity, set that to 0, come to my mark out and set it to 50. I'm going to set the outline blur to 4. And I'm going to just tweak the crystallize size to 64 so we have a different crystallize. So that's starting to make it a little bit more complex. And I'm going to call this group that we've now got with our 3 text layers, I'm going to call it text. And I'm going to make a new group and put that inside. And the reason for that is that eventually I want to add some lighting, but I want to be able to add it only to this, I want to make only this top group 3D and not the text group itself, otherwise these effects start to fall apart. I'm going to add a levels to the text group, like so. Come to the inspector, twirl open the controls. I'm going to use opacity, which affects not the actual luminance of the image itself, but the transparency. And I'm going to do that by coming to opacity white in and set a value of 0.2. And you can see that punches up the opacity. The advantages of this is we can come back later and adjust that if we feel like we want more or less of the text. Okay, now let's start to try and make this look a bit more lifelike and interesting. We're going to make a new group. I'm going to bring it inside the text. And I'm going to call this refract. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my base text layer, option drag it into that refract group, like so. And what I'm going to be trying to do is to make a glassy, icy texture to this. I'm going to delete the sequence text behavior from this because I don't need that. And I'm going to set both the face opacity and the blur, outline opacity I should say, to 100%. So both of those are now at 100. And I'm going to hide that refract group, come to the text layer and the library, and under distortion I'm going to select refraction, and I'm going to add it to the text group below the levels, just like that. Come to the inspector, take the refract group and drag it into that height map source well, and watch what happens to the text. So there we go, that's really quite a nice effect of adding 3D depth to that text. And if we want to, but we've got that crystallize effect on there, I can adjust the size, and you notice how that, as I adjust the size, it's changing the amount of sort of random icy distortion we've got on there. I'm going to come to the refract filter itself, and I'm going to set the value up to 200. Maybe just play with the softness a bit. It's really up to you what sort of look you want. I've got that 0.3. Let's leave it there. I want to add yet more icy distortion, and to do that I'm going to make a new group. Again, put it in the text group, and I'm going to call this cellular. Sorry, can't type very well today. Come to the library, generators, and add the cellular generator to that group. I'm going to come to the inspector. I'm going to set the size to 50 and the speed to 0. I'm going to twirl open the gradient, and I'm just going to move this right hand color tab to 90%, just so that bumps up the brightness, gives us a bit more to play with. And I'm going to hide this group, come to my text group, library, filters, and this time I'm going to apply a glass distortion filter, and I'm going to apply it above the refraction. And then I'm going to add, I can do it this way, I can add it like that, or to make life easier for you, I'm going to come to the inspector. Here's the glass distortion image well. I'm going to drag that group in there, and you'll see if I turn that on and off, we've got more interesting glass distortion. Let's turn the value of that up and the softness up till we get something we like the look of. There you go. And you can play with that till you get a nice amount of extra icy distortion. That's all well and good, but we really need to start making this look a bit more like ice. And I'm going to do that by creating an image mask for the text group that's going to animate on and help the way that the whole thing appears and make it all look very dramatic. So I'm going to make a new group, and I'm going to call it mask. And I'm going to come to my library, and I'm going to add a bunch of generators because we're going to use a variety of things. I'm going to select caustics, and I'm going to hold down the command key, select cellular. Then I'm going to scroll down and select clouds, and scroll down further and select membrane, and then hit apply. Now I've got all those in that group. I'm going to turn off everything apart from the caustics, and I'm going to come to the inspector, and the caustics are going to give me moving light. So you see the caustics sort of auto animate with these kind of glinty interlocking cells. Just to make a few adjustments, the size I'm going to bump up to 0.2, the speed I'm going to slow down to 0.3, the refraction I'm going to turn up to 300, give me a little more dense texture, and the brightness I'm going to leave at 10. And then I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate that, and in the duplicate I'm going to set the refraction to 200 and the brightness to 20. Really just building up complexity. Duplicate that one more time, set the refraction to 150 and the brightness to 15. Then I'm going to make another group, Command Shift N, and add those caustics to it. Now what I want to do is I want these lighting effects to freeze at the freeze point. And you'd have thought that you could just come to the speed and keyframe the speed, but it really doesn't work. I mean, try it out for yourself, but it doesn't do the kind of thing that you'd hope it would do. So we're going to use a trick that's well worth knowing. I'm going to select that group, hit K to make a clone, and then turn off the actual group itself. Make sure I'm at my mark-out point. Come down to retiming behaviors and select hold frame, and that will apply the hold frame at that frame, so it will animate and then hold. Hold frame, again, you can't apply it to, I couldn't apply it to that existing group, it won't allow me, but if I make that group a clone, I can do it in one hit like that. Okay, so that's my glints all sorted. Next we're going to come to that original caustics group. I'm going to take my base caustics, hold down the Option key and drag it out to above that clone layer. And this I want to carry on a little bit of light movement after that hold, but I'm going to turn everything right down. So the size I'm going to turn down to 0.1 and the speed right down to 0.1 as well. Next, let's look at cellular, and this is going to give me some snow frost-like particles, and we're going to set the size to 3 and the speed to 0.25, and these will carry on moving all the way through the animation. Let's twirl open the gradient and let's set a tab, an opacity tab on the right by clicking on this top bar, dragging it all the way to the right, and click on the left tab, set the opacity to 0 and move that to 25%. So you see that tab is now 25% along there, and the particles will be that much more see-through. I just want to animate the blend of that, so I'm going to come to the first frame and set a keyframe of 0, come to the mark out, set an opacity keyframe of 75. So now those are going to fade in. Next we'll come to our clouds generator, and you'll see that's fully opaque until we start playing with it. Come to the generator properties. I'm going to set the speed to 0.2. And now the point of the clouds is that I want a nice organic way of increasing the density of the overall mask, and clouds are great for giving you really nice natural looking textures. So I've set my speed to 0.2. I'm going to twirl open the gradient. I'm going to set an extra opacity tab. The left hand one I'm going to set to 40%, starting to be see-through, and the right hand one to 75%. So the overall value of this is not going to be ever at 100%. Again, I'm going to animate the opacity of the overall layer, come to my first frame, hit a keyframe, set that to 0, come to my mark out, and turn it up to 100%. So that's going to fade in, increase in density. The last component of this is the membrane, and I'm going to use the membrane to create the illusion of cracks, large horizontal cracks in the ice block. Come to the membrane generator tab. I'm going to set the speed to 0. I'm going to set the end 3 value to -1.4 and the offset to 0.2. Really, you can just play with this until you get whatever works best for you, but I'm just whizzing on through with these preset values. And then I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate that, so we can cover the left-hand side. I'm going to set the end 1 value to -0.6 and the offset to 0.37. Well worth getting to know the membrane generator because, again, it's a nice organic looking thing. All these controls, start, end, basically just affect the shape of the membrane, the various different corners and control points of it. Okay, so we are finally finished with our mask, except for the fact that I want to add another levels filter to the overall group, like so. And again, twirl open the controls, come to the opacity, because again we want to be using the alpha, not the luminance. And I'm going to set the black in opacity to 0.5, the white in to 0.8, and the gamma to 0.9. And you see what that levels did. It just crunched the levels really of that map. So that's looking at the alpha channel, which is what we're going to be using without the levels and with the levels. Okay, so let's come back to our text group. I'm going to hit Shift Command M to add an image mask. And I'm going to drag that mask group into the source well for the image mask. And I'm going to turn off stencil. And I need to come back to viewing full color. There we go. And now let me just RAM preview that for you. And if I hit play, you see we've got a really nice organic reveal. Well worth all that effort, because the more complexity you can build into something like this, the better it's going to look, the more it's going to deceive the eye and just add extra interest. So really all we've got left to do is add some lighting, and I'm going to hit Command-Shift-L to add a light. I'm going to keep it as 2D, because actually the only group that I want to be 3D is this one that includes the text, and I'm going to turn that into a 3D group. Come to my light. I want to animate the intensity. So if I come to my first frame, I'm going to set a keyframe of 250. Come to my mark out, set a keyframe of 325, because I want to go really nice and bright as it congeals. And then at 4 seconds, I want it to have faded down quite a lot. Bring it down to 150. I'm going to set the fall off start of the light to 750 and the fall off itself to 25. And I'm going to move its Z position to 400, so it's closer to the camera, covers more of the area. And I'm going to add 2 more lights. Command-Shift-L. The intensity I'm going to set to 250, leave the fall-offs as they are. Come to the position, set the X position to -650 and the Z position to 30, because I want it to be really close to the icy texture. So you'll see that's brightening up my left-hand side. It's a good idea just to sort of move it around till you get it lighting up something that you like. Maybe put it there. And I'm going to duplicate that and simply come to my X value and type 650 there. Move it across the other side. Again, just do a little bit of manual adjustment till you get something you like. Again, I would add probably another couple of lights just to start to pick out lots of individual little details, because again, that'll just make it all look much more interesting. And what you could do is you could add an oscillate behavior to the intensity of some of these outside lights, so they change in value and it'll all look very, very smart. Finally, let's add a camera. Option Command C to add a camera. Set the camera to -165 and add a camera dolly, and we'll dolly into -350. So that'll gradually move away. So I just wanted to show you, before we go, I wanted to show you how adjusting various facets of the mask will change the overall look. You could just change the opacity of the clouds tab. You see how that changes that look there quite a lot. You could also decide to move the offset of the clouds so that transparent bits are falling across different letters. So use the X and Y offset. And obviously you can use the levels for the mask to make changes as well. So you've got lots of control really there to play with, just as you'd like. So I hope that's been an interesting tutorial. It's quite a long one, but lots of useful tips, I hope. Have a great holiday, and thanks very much to all my subscribers for your support, and see you all next year.